Are you craving a trip on Space Mountain? Well, we've got the next best thing. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePaoli, and today on the show, I have my friend Derek back from the Mad Chatters podcast. Hello, Derek.
Hello, Jeffrey.
How's it going?
It's pretty good. How are you?
Good. That was very like game show host. Hello, Jeffrey. I like it.
Well.
Anyway, guys.
Maybe that's in my future. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe that's a future job. Yeah, that'd be great. Anyways, guys, happy 4th of July, everybody. That's right. If you're listening to this on the day of its release, it is Independence Day in the United States of America. So my friend Derek and I will be having a discussion about the patriotic attractions that you can experience every day in the Disney parks. So let's get to it.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
So, Derek, before we jump into individual attractions, I do want to have a conversation with you about the amount of patriotism that exists in Disney parks. Because although I love it, it is constantly shocking to me every time I visit.
There is a lot. And my first thought always goes to international guests who, when they come to Magic Kingdom, like, do they care about these things?
That's always what I think. I mean, listen, it hits you the second you walk into Disneyland or Magic Kingdom with Main Street is just like Americana vomited everywhere. So, and it's even more interesting that some of the overseas parks even have Main Streets, very, very American Main Streets. So it is this weird thing. I'm surprised in this day and age, honestly, that it's remained as prevalent as it is. I mean, we'll get into the Hall of Presidents, but I mean, I just always think to myself, nobody else could do this. Like, literally, Universal Studios could never do this. And it's an interesting fact to me.
No, it's so true. And I know we're going to get into it, but of course, it all goes back to Walt in a lot of ways. But I'm with you every time they, like, for instance, with the Hall of Presidents, whenever it's time for a new president, rumors are everywhere saying, oh, they're going to change it now. Surely they're going to do something different now. But no.
I know, they just keep going on and on and on. So it is pretty remarkable to me. And it's kind of a feat that they can do it and quote unquote get away with it. Like I said, I like it. It just surprises me. And, I know here at Disneyland, a lot of people spend the 4th of July at Disneyland, and partially because it's like, okay, there will be fireworks, which is a big thing on the 4th of July. But also, I think Disneyland is just Americana. Like, there's something about it that screams America.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound super meta, but is it Americana because it's Disneyland as a park is now such a huge part of America's history? When people think of America, they think of Disneyland. I
think that's partially true, but I also think that Walt set the stage for an amazing, American adventure the minute you walk through those gates. It's very weird to me. But in any case, let's get into some specific attractions. And these are things that are year-round in the park. So obviously we're talking about this today because it is the 4th of July. But these are things you can do every single day. And I want to start off with one of your favorite, the Voices of Liberty at Epcot.
Yes, I'm so glad we're starting with this because it is one of my absolute favorite things in all of Walt Disney World. And whenever I'm with first-timers, I try to make a point to go see the Voices of Liberty because I think they're one of those groups that if you didn't know they were there, you could go a whole day in Epcot and not experience them. So this is a singing group that is over in the American Pavilion. So World Showcase, for you Disneyland fans who don't know, World Showcase is the area in Epcot that focuses on different nations around the world. And of course, in the center, there's a pavilion themed to the United States of America.
Can we just take a moment there and talk about the egotism and the placement in size of the America Pavilion at Epcot is really quite hilarious. So I always find that funny. I mean, I have no problem with it being that way. I just do think it's funny. It's like, this park is in America. And although we're celebrating every nation, this is America.
It's a salute to all nations, but mostly America.
Exactly.
And that's where this group sings every single day. several times each day. And when I watch them, I think it's always 8, sometimes 9 singers. But of course, there are probably 15 or 16, so they can schedule them on different days. But they perform a cappella arrangements of American standards, basically. So let's see, Summertime, they sing a lot. I feel like I always hear them sing Oh Susanna, because it has that line about banjo on my knee, and they all raise their arms like they're holding a banjo, and they sing ticka 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 as if they're plucking it. But Skip to My Lou, that's a popular one. But they're dressed in like colonial era clothing, like very heavy dresses and suits and things like that. And then they just sing these crisp, like so pure. Their voices are so pure, and they blend so perfectly, these a cappella arrangements. And it's just 5-10 minutes of just, I don't know, it just makes you feel like you're home, like warm and comforting to me.
Yeah, here's the thing. You did a wonderful job describing that, but I don't think there's any way to put into words the experience that is Voices of Liberty, because once again, this is something that's like, why is this in a theme park? Even though it's very well placed, obviously, but it is such a gift, and it is on the schedule, right? It's not just like a happening.
Correct. It's on the schedule, and it's basically the pre-show to the American Adventure. So in the same building is an attraction, and usually Voices of Liberty occurs right before the show, so that way you can just head upstairs once it's over.
Did you know that I actually, obviously I've seen the Voices of Liberty at Epcot, but I've seen them at Disneyland as well.
You know, I forgot they did that a few years ago, right?
A few years ago, and I don't know why. Was it because they brought Lincoln back? Was that the deal?
I think it was the year of limited time magic.
Oh, I think you're right. Yes. Yeah. And in the Opera House, where Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln is, which of course we'll get to, they did perform before that show. And I remember seeing them there, and I actually recognized several of the singers from Walt Disney World. So some of them came from Florida to perform. And yeah, that was such a treat. Unfortunately, it didn't last here. And obviously, I don't think it's as good a home as the American Adventure. The American Adventure is the perfect place for them. That lobby is so wonderful just for a cappella music in general, because the acoustics in that space, they sing right below the dome, correct?
They do, and they encourage guests. Like, they sing a song, and then they tell everyone, please come under the dome if you want the best sound. And it's true. That's where the best sound happens.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I've always found that guests are really respectful of the performance, which isn't really a guarantee in a theme park. I feel like I don't want to say an acquired taste, but it's kind of an acquired taste. Not everybody's into a cappella music. Not everybody's into like American folksy classic music. Yet for some reason, it's semi-riveting to sit there and listen to the Voices of Liberty.
It is. And also you see it on their faces, like almost in a cheesy way. They're just smiling and they're so pleasant. And I think it rubs off on you. Like, you want to hear what they have to say because they seem so just genuine and innocent and all of that. It is kind of funny to me, though, just a funny story about that. Everyone is respectful and enjoys them for the most part. But when my fellow podcasters and I were there this past Christmas, they started singing one of like the Hanukkah songs that I guess I'm so not up with my Jewish traditions, and I apologize, but I think they were singing Hebrew or something. But a woman walked in the middle of the song, an older lady who clearly knew the song, and at the top of her lungs and a little off key just started singing along.
Oh, amazing. I love
And everyone was kind of like turning their heads like, oh, okay.
Listen, she was in the spirit. It's all good.
She was. She was.
Do you happen to know, I don't know if this was a limited time magic thing or not. I never saw it in person, but do they still sing a song from Newsies?
That was limited time magic. Now that you say that, shoot. The last time I was there, they sang a song from a movie, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was, but I was almost kind of taken out of the moment. I don't love when they do that.
Yeah, what song was it from Newsies that they sang? Was it Seize the Day? I can't remember.
Seize the Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Which is great.
Yeah, I would have loved to see them do that in person, but I did not get to catch that, unfortunately. But as you mentioned, the Voices of Liberty perform in this the same space that houses the American Adventure, which is another year-round American patriotic show in Epcot. Now, this is an audio animatronic stage show all about American history, which is honestly one of my favorite stage productions of all time. Like, I am so impressed by the production value of the American Adventure every time I see it. And have you ever been under the stage? Have you done the tour that takes you there?
No, but talk about, I mean, of all tours I could do, that is the highest on my list.
You really should. I think it's the Undiscovered Epcot tour that takes you there, if I'm remembering correctly. And it was funny because I watched the American Adventure the night before, like when I got to Walt Disney World, and then I knew I was taking the tour the next day, and I just made a comment like, man, this is like one of the best shows I've ever seen. I would love to go under that stage. And that was like the first thing we did on the tour. It may have changed since then, but they take you under, and there are so many audio animatronic figures that it's basically a giant grid under the audience and under the stage that just kind of goes back and forth and in different patterns, and when it's their time they rise up above the stage level, and it's so insanely beautiful. And it's narrated by Ben Franklin and Mark Twain, which is really interesting because they never lived during the same time, but you know, it's they work as great narrators of American history. And a really fun fact about, you probably know this, but do you know the story about the forced perspective of the building that houses the American Adventure?
Yeah. So it's made to look like it has more stories than it actually does. Fewer stories. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's a giant building. It's actually 5 stories tall, and they've used forced perspective, so they make everything larger to make it look like it's actually only 2.5 stories tall, which is pretty cool. It's like the opposite of what we're used to on Main Street USA, but it's a massive building that it's in because it's so many audio animatronic figures. And the story goes through the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the Centennial International Exhibition, and the Great Depression. And I didn't realize this, but in 1993 they updated all of the animatronics in that attraction, which I was always impressed because, I mean, they're some of the best audio animatronic figures. I forget who it is, but somebody like uses a lasso, and is it Will Rogers, or am I making that up?
It is absolutely Will Rogers, and that part, the most recent time I watched this a few months ago, because they updated a little bit and I wanted to see it. Like, this has never been my favorite show, but this last time I was just struck by everything you're saying, how impressive it is and how many moving parts there are, and just little things like the lasso. Like, he doesn't need to be twirling a lasso while he speaks. It's already impressive, but these little movements are so cool.
And Ben Franklin walks upstairs.
That's true.
And I believe Mark Twain has like a smoking cigar. Like, the detail in this production is top notch. Like, I really love it. And of course, one of my favorite theme park songs of all time came from this attraction. Golden Dream is such a wonderful song, and it's kind of the finale. And I know it's changed recently. They have a film montage at the end of this show that is kind of like the easiest thing to change frequently to keep up to date. And that was changed semi-recently. What was the big scuffle? They replaced Whoopi with Beyonce or something?
Okay, if you ask Aaron Wallace, it was a scuffle. If you ask anyone else, it was just time for a change, I think.
Fair enough. Beyonce
they took out Lance Armstrong, I think, which is maybe not the worst thing.
Yeah, that was a questionable situation. Luckily, Harvey Weinstein was never in the film montage, so
can you imagine?
So we're safe there. Can you imagine? They would have had to like close down the attraction if that were the case, and be like, we really can't show this anymore until we fix this. But in any case, I'm obsessed with American Adventure. I do understand why some people wouldn't be into it. I just love a colonial America. I grew up in New England, and like I've been surrounded by that my whole life, and that's probably like one of my favorite periods in history. I think it's really beautiful. Obviously, Liberty Square in Magic Kingdom is a very similar feel, but I don't know. I love that time period, so that's part of the reason why I love it so much. And also, being such a theater nerd, I'm just overwhelmed by the production value in that show. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a must-see on my list. How do you feel about that?
You know, must-see is hard to say. Just because I don't know how people will respond to a 30, I was gonna say it's 30
long.
Minutes.
Is it like 45 minutes?
It's probably 40. You're probably right. To carve that much time out of your day, I mean, that's a big commitment. And if the people you're going with don't like it, that was that was a big chunk of time you lost. But then again, if you are a person who respects audio animatronics and theme park history, this is up there. It's one of the best, for sure.
I would agree. And Voices of Liberty, as we said, opens that show. So both in my book are must-do. So are you telling me that you will often go listen to Voices of Liberty and then leave the building?
I mean, 95% of the time, that's what I do.
Oh, no.
I'm not the only one.
I guess that says a lot for the Voices of Liberty, right? Like, that's honestly really impressive. Like, you will go out of your way to see a performance that really is just an introduction to a show. So you're more interested in the pre-show than you are the show. That's impressive.
Yeah, and it's not like it's the same singers who are like, okay, now follow us. We're going to go perform on stage. And I'm like, no, I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an audio animatronic show.
Yeah.
So,
Fair enough.
I just one time want the Voices of Liberty to break out into Hamilton songs. Like, I want them to come out with handheld mics and do Cabinet Battle #1 or something.
I'm sure a lot of people would love that. That's the next limited time magic.
Yes, one day.
That's fantastic. I was going to say something else about that. Oh, so I've been seeing lots of videos lately of animatronics going bad, like in Spaceship Earth. I've seen it a couple times where like the characters are essentially having seizures and it looks like some Exorcist stuff going on in there. And I'm just curious, as a person who goes to Florida a lot, have you ever seen that happen in the American Adventure?
Oh my word, no. That's terrifying.
Yeah, you've been seeing these videos going around, right?
Yes. Oof.
It's weird. Every time I see one, I'm like, this is like The Exorcist. It's unbelievable. Crazy.
It's weird.
So we always forget, like, those are such complicated machines, and it's so easy to forget that because they're so well made and produced and everything, but it's beyond impressive. And as I said, the American Adventure is made up of so many audio animatronic figures. That's probably what impresses me more than anything. But in any case, let's move on to the Hall of Presidents.
Yeah, so speaking of so many audio animatronic figures, let's talk about the attraction where they have managed to cram 44 audio animatronics onto one stage. So this is at the Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World. It's not part of Disneyland. It opened with the park opening day. And basically it is an indoor theater, not unlike the American Adventure. And when you go in, there's a little lobby with some presidential portraits and things like that. But the show itself is really, again, not all that different from American Adventure. Well, it's definitely not as detailed. But basically there are like five massive screens that sort of circle you halfway. And they show just some, key moments from presidential or from presidencies throughout history. And then the big finale is when the screens part and retract into the walls, and there in front of you are the 44 presidents in audio animatronic form. A few of them speak, but they do a sort of roll call naming each president, and that's my favorite part. And whenever they say a president's name, the spotlight shines on that president's figure, and he maybe gives a nod or he waves to the audience. It's all very... I don't know, the music swells and you kind of sit up a little bit straighter when it gets to that part. It's very presidential.
Yeah, now I have a feeling I'm going to know the answer to this question, but it sounds like you prefer this to American Adventure.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to give that impression.
Okay, so you hate it. You hate it.
That's what I said. Yep, took the words right out of my mouth. No, listen, I like the Hall of Presidents, but of all the things we're going to talk about on this episode, this is the one that baffles me the most, I think.
Well, for good reason.
Exists.
I mean, placement alone is good enough reason to be baffled by it. It's pretty much next to Cinderella Castle. And as much as I love Liberty Square, Magic Kingdom just kind of doesn't seem like the right park for it. But once again, I applaud the fact that it's there and it's accepted. And, obviously the Hall of Presidents has been there for a very long time. I haven't been in probably a decade or so to the Hall of Presidents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't frequent it and I won't anytime soon. But yeah, this was originally kind of conceived for Disneyland. Walt wanted to do this, and basically the audio animatronic technology wasn't there because it was going to be an attraction called One Nation Under God at Disneyland. That I believe at one point he was going to use wax figures, and then he was like, "No, I want them to be audio animatronic figures." And he just didn't live to see the day, essentially. So when they opened Magic Kingdom, they put it there, which was pretty cool. And these days, the current president speaks in the attraction, and that started with Bill Clinton. And once again, I marvel at the fact that Disney can do this. They can get the sitting president of the United States of America to put in his schedule time to record a speech for Walt Disney Imagineering. Like, it's crazy to me. It just blows my mind.
I mean, obviously, I'm a Disney fan, so I probably think differently from the presidents. Do you think part of them is like, cool, I get to be a permanent part of the attraction in Magic Kingdom?
Well, from what I understand, Bill Clinton actually thought it was really cool. And he was all like, hey, should I sing Zippity Doo-Dah? Like, he was kind of into it. I'm sure some of them are just like, couldn't care less. But from what I understand, like, they really spend time with them. I've heard, I don't know how accurate this is, but I've heard, like, they get samples of their hair, and they even take wardrobe from the White House. Like, the suit that the audio animatronic is wearing is from it's something that the president had worn at one point. And even to the lobby, that's the lobby that has the presidential seal sewn into the carpet. Is that correct?
Yeah, which they had to get like special permission or an act of Congress, I think, to
It's
approve.
it's one of two or very few places that I can't remember the exact number, but you can't just embroider that into a carpet and like have it be legal. It's you need permission, and obviously you need permission to record the president's voice and get his suit and so on and so forth. So like, it's just kind of amazing the respect that this country, once again, has for the Walt Disney Company and Imagineering in general. It's just mind-blowing to me. It's crazy.
Yeah, and just reading some of the facts that, or some of the steps that went into making this. I mean, like you said, they couldn't do it when they wanted to because it was just way too detailed. And then when they finally decided after Walt's passing, okay, I think we can do this. Even then, it was more than just making 44 audio animatronics that all move like...
And sculpt them. Not only making the mechanics, but sculpting these presidents to look like the presidents we know.
Right. Not make like 5 of this sculpture and give them a different hairstyle so it looks different. No, it has to look like the president. But one thing I didn't even think about was the film that shows before. So basically the film is about 15 minutes. And I'm not going to lie, like sometimes I tune out a little bit during the film, but then those screens move, and then that's what you've been waiting for the whole time is when you see the presidents. But something I was reading today was talking about how, so the film is basically like montages of paintings of what they're talking about, because obviously they don't have video footage of these things, so they're showing you paintings. And all of these paintings had to be painted by Imagineers or artists who worked by Disney, and they were painted in the style of the periods in which those things took place. So it's just like so much thought went into this. And then they, of course, had to put those onto 70 millimeter film on this huge screen. Yeah.
And they counted on people showing up to it. Like that's we're in a theme park with roller coasters and like very exciting singing bears down the street. I mean, like, it just seems so out of place yet works. And like, frankly, I couldn't imagine a Magic Kingdom without it. Even though it's not an attraction that I frequent, it would seem wrong not to have it there. So it is interesting though how the more current presidents were always like, oh, they do not look like the they never quite look like the president as much as I think fans would want them to. I think they definitely count on the distance that we are sitting from them. But it's funny because somebody once said, they're like, well, yeah, because, we put these presidents in when they're first elected, number one. After a 4 or 8-year presidency, you look very different by the end of that. Like, it ages you. He's like, these other ones that we're used to just seeing paintings of, these are essentially, they're not photographs that we're working off of. These are paintings, so we all think we know what George Washington looks like, but, like, how much do we really,
Right. I mean, we see Donald Trump in HD, or we saw Barack Obama in HD TV all the time. And so to see a audio animatronic, I will say I watched the most recent show of this. So Donald Trump is in it now. And I had seen all the pictures and had nightmares because of these pictures of the close-up. But in person, I think it looks great. And honestly, a lot of the older presidents, I'm like, oof. Like Teddy Roosevelt looking rough.
Really?
Over there, yeah. Just because they're just kind of wonky.
What do they call the super high-tech audio animatronics? What are the A100s? Am I making that up, or is that accurate?
A something, you might be right.
I think it's A100, something like that. And I know that George Washington and Lincoln and the current president are all A100s.
Yeah.
And I would assume even like the retired, like Clinton and George H.W. Bush and all of them are probably still A100s that just don't do what they used to do at one point. Now they're just a nod or a wave, I'm sure. So
yeah, maybe. But I think I've heard that they actually like basically take the skin off the high-tech audio animatronic and put it on one of the older audio animatronics and then, use the good one for the current president.
That would make sense. That's interesting. That would totally make sense. Just monetarily. Interesting. Anyway, before the Hall of Presidents, there was Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. And right now you can see this at Disneyland. So everything we've talked about so far is Walt Disney World. There was Epcot, then Magic Kingdom. Now in Disneyland Park, we have the Disneyland story presenting Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, which essentially came back in 2009, but really started way back in 1964 at the World's Fair State of Illinois Pavilion. And this was the first human audio animatronic figure. And this blew people's minds. Like, supposedly, the stories I hear, people in those audiences couldn't believe that it wasn't an actor. And actually, the story, I'm sure you've heard this one before, where they actually had to shut it down because when it first opened, they were having technical problems with it, and the oil or the grease, oil, I guess, the fluid that they would use to pump through the figure to make it move was red. And apparently a hose broke, and they had red fluids coming out of President Lincoln's chest. And
no, yeah. I have not heard that.
Oh, so they were going for hyperrealism. And I believe it's a true story. I don't think I just made that up. But yeah, it was pretty crazy how this just occurred. Like the state of Illinois was like, yeah, we'll give you the money to do that. And Disney did it. And really it was a huge step because before that it was essentially birds were the only animatronics. We had the Tiki Tiki Room, which were the first audio animatronics, and then Lincoln, which is incredible. And for a long time, they actually thought that they lost the figure of the first Lincoln audio animatronic. And then one day they showed up in archive somewhere. They dusted off a box, found him inside. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he's still part of Walt Disney's One Man's Dream attraction. Or what's the name? Walt Disney Presents at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Is he still in there?
Oh, I just don't remember. Okay. I don't remember.
Okay, well, he was there at one point. He may still be there. And this attraction did originally open, as I said, at the World's Fair in 64, but they duplicated it in 65 to go to Disneyland Park. So I always thought that they actually closed it at the fair and just moved it, very much like the Carousel of Progress. But they actually duplicated the attraction because it was at Disneyland the same time that the fair was still going on. And then in 73, it was replaced by something called the Walt Disney Story, which was essentially the history of Walt Disney. But apparently people got really upset that they got rid of Lincoln at Disneyland, which surprised me. I mean, I would want a Walt Disney film in there. But in 1975, they changed it to the Walt Disney Story, featuring Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. Then in 2001, the Walt Disney Story, featuring Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, The Journey to Gettysburg. And this was a really weird thing. I actually experienced this, where you each had headsets. Everybody sat down and put on these headsets, and it featured binaural sound technology. So it's like you were a character in the story, and like they'd be cutting your hair, and you just hear like the scissors snipping by your ears. And I just remember it actually being a really impressive audio experience, unlike the Drew Carey Sounds Dangerous experience.
I was just thinking, I think you're mixing this up with Sounds Dangerous.
No, it was much, much, much better than that. So that went on from 2001 till about 2004, I believe. And then 2005 to 2009, this space was taken over by the first 50 Magical Years, the Disneyland film starring Steve Martin, which is now shown in the lobby. And then currently it's called the Disneyland Story, presenting Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. It is very weird to me that they kind of mix those things for a long time now, back to 75, where we first brought Walt in. and then also featuring Lincoln. I don't really get how the two go together, but somehow that's what they do with it at the Opera House at Disneyland. But have you seen this? You must have done this at least once, right?
Yes, I have done this. In fact, the first time I actually heard of it was from the Modern Family episode where they went to Disneyland. And the one thing the patriarch of the family wants to do the whole time is go see Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, because he remembers going as a kid to that all the time.
Interesting.
And yeah, so one of the first things I wanted to do when I went to Disneyland for the first time just a few years ago was see this. And we did, and it's good.
Yeah, it is very good, especially since they've put the new figure in there when they brought that back. And that was a big deal because, obviously they got rid of the headsets and everything. And supposedly it's very close to the original production now that Walt Disney directed. So they kind of restored it back to Walt's version of the show. And that's kind of cool. So it's got some nice Disney history in there as well as, a great moment with Mr. Lincoln.
Now, does the show have Golden Dream? Like
now
American
it does.
Adventure?
Yeah, they've added Golden Dream. It's basically the exit song. When the curtains close, they start playing that song as you leave. And I think it says, America, keep on dreaming. And then you see an eagle fly past the curtain and then fly kind of over above the exit doors. So it's so beautifully done. And it's a great sound system in there. And the audio animatronic figure is splendid. And it's a great show. I mean, if I'm in the park on like 4th of July or Veterans Day or some patriotic holiday, I definitely swing by, but it's not abnormal for me to swing by as well. I wouldn't say, definitely not every time, but I do enjoy it quite a bit. I like it. I don't know. I was going to say, I think I like it more than the Hall of Presidents, but the Hall of Presidents is very impressive. So I'm not.
It is. And I love how the history of the two, like the histories are so wrapped up in each other because you mentioned like Liberty Square was going to be this land in Disneyland. I think it was basically behind where Lincoln is now.
It was basically, if you've ever taken the backstage path at Disneyland, which is, so if you're walking into Disneyland and you're looking down Main Street USA, to your right, there's basically a pathway behind those buildings that will take you into the park that they'll open if it's very crowded. Or if you're going like a Mickey's Halloween party or something, they'll open those up and let you use them. That was supposed to be, I think they were going to call it Edison Street or Edison Square at one point.
Yes, Liberty Street and Edison Square.
Yeah.
And I think his original idea was, let's do a Hall of Presidents. I think it was called, well, you mentioned it, One Nation Under God. And it was going to be this huge thing. Way too expensive. So that's when he said, well, let's just give them one so they can see what we're talking about. And that's when he did Lincoln. People loved it. And then once again, it could be back on track for the Hall of Presidents.
And the interesting thing about Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, I mean, I think for a lot of people who go regularly, it's kind of a joke. Like, why is this here? I'm not going into that show. But let's just take a moment to recognize the fact that without Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, there would be no Pirates of the Caribbean the way we know it. There would be no Haunted Mansion the way we know it. Like the history of the audio animatronic figure alone makes this like a really important attraction. And important enough, like I said, back in 1973 when they replaced it with a story about Walt Disney, the public made enough noise that they brought it back. So I think that that's a pretty huge deal. Like I said, I'd rather see something about the history of Walt. Let me ask you, though, how would you feel if, say they did want to do another show about Walt? How would you feel about an audio animatronic Walt?
Oh, I say don't go there.
Really?
Yeah.
I've always wanted one. I've always wanted an audio animatronic Walt. Why not go there?
And I assume like use one of his old speeches, like audio.
I would hope so, but I don't know. Maybe get a. I would if I were working on the project, I would hope we could find clean enough audio or audio that we could clean up to sound good enough. But I mean, getting old audio, when you hear that opening day speech, it's muffled. It doesn't sound great. So to sit through an entire show like that, I don't know. They may need to get a voice match for Walt, which that would bother me. I'm not going to lie. They would have to work really, really, really hard to make that good, because his is a tough voice to match. I've never really heard anybody do a good Walt impression. Sorry, Tom Hanks, but like it didn't sound like Walt, nor do I think he was necessarily trying to. But I don't know. So why no for you? Like you were pretty immediately like no, and I'm curious why.
Well, describe the context. Is this a Lincoln-like attraction?
It would be, I mean, obviously something that would be dignified and, something like a one man's dream or even him just talking about the history of Disneyland or a recreation of, I mean, one of my favorite things to watch is that old Disneyland show that he hosted. And it would be kind of cool to see that recreated like live action on stage, in some sort of tribute. I don't know. These are just weird random ideas. I'm just curious.
Just being honest off the top of my head, I think part of me balks at that idea a little bit because like people on the internet are so mean and I just imagine so many tweets with like a close up of his face. And I feel like even though what they're saying is not true about Walt, I feel like that detracts a little bit from his legacy.
Sure. I would definitely have concerns about it. Like if they announced we're doing this, I'd be like, oh God, this is not something you can mess up. This needs to work. But I'm not against it. I will say I would love to see it done well, but I accept the fact that it would be difficult to do it well and in the right circumstance. But in any case, way off topic.
Right.
Let's hop back to the Magic Kingdom for something very close to the Hall of Presidents that is one of the most magical things ever.
This is absolutely magical, and I love it so much. This attraction, probably the newest of the ones we're going to talk about, is called The Muppets Present Great Moments in American History. It opened October 2nd, 2016. In fact, I was there opening day to see the Muppets in Liberty Square.
Nice.
I remember when they announced this, I guess a year before this or a few months maybe, and they said, first it was a rumor.
Oh, I balked about it. I was like,
oh my gosh, it sounded so stupid. There were going to be Muppets popping out of the second story windows near Hall of Presidents in Liberty Square, and they were going to basically tell their versions of big moments in American history. And when I first heard the rumor, I thought, I don't know where you got that information, but someone is playing a trick on you. There's no way they're going to do that.
I said the same thing about Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout.
Me too.
I was like, no way.
Absolutely. And then Disney announced it, and it was like, guys, what are we doing? Why are there Muppets near the Hall of Presidents? Those two things could not be farther apart from each other in terms of like context. And anyway.
But the Muppets can really be placed anywhere. Like, that's the cool thing about the Muppets. The Muppets are, like, they're showbiz people, right? So the Muppets can put on a show about anything. You could literally place the Muppets in any land, and as long as it had their style of comedy, you're golden. And that's why I'm upset that it's not at Disneyland, because it is so spectacular in Liberty Square. I'm like, please, put these on the windows of Main Street USA. Please, put these anywhere. Put these in Hollywood. I don't care where. It is such a good show that I'm angry it's not here. But in any case.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it just works. Somehow it works. And I love that really for the first time we're seeing the Muppets in their natural element. Can I say that? Because like Muppet Vision 3D, you're seeing them in a movie like you have your entire life. But this is like actual puppeteers moving the Muppets, and then if there's audio of their actual voices, and they're telling jokes that the Muppets actually would tell, and it's like, I'm here, I'm seeing it.
One of the voices are retired at this point, but
okay.
Kermit sounded a little different now. But do you know the slight difference with these Muppets versus the regular Muppets you would see on TV and on the big screen? There's something a little bit different about them. Yeah, they're 5% larger than the traditional Muppet size because of the distance that they are from the audience. They actually made them 5% larger, which I think is, first of all, I would never notice, but I find that very interesting. I believe that that's a fact. I read it online, so it must be true. But I mean, it makes sense to me that they would have to do that.
Sure, 5% seems like nothing, but yeah, that does make sense. Especially Sam the Eagle, he's way up there.
He is way up there. It's true.
Yeah, but I love this so much.
Only one of the shows use Sam, right?
No, both of the shows use Sam. Only one of the shows uses the crier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so in one of the shows, Sam the Eagle is way up in that tiny window on the Hall of Presidents building. In the other show, he's in the other building with the Muppets. But only one of the shows, my personal favorite, uses the town crier who holds up the signs that say, like, applause and, what's the thing you chant? I don't remember.
Huzzah?
No, something you're mad at the king, and I don't remember what the phrase is. But
is this that's the Declaration of Independence show, right?
Yes, and the other one is the Paul Revere's ride.
Yeah, Paul Revere's ride, not as good. If you have a,
No.
do they put which? Now this is on a schedule, but do they put which show on the schedule? I don't think they do. Do they?
They don't. But if you ask the cast member standing outside Hall of Presidents, he knows and he can tell you.
Okay, cool. This is a can't miss. Like at the Magic Kingdom, you must carve out time to go see, even if you only see one of them. The Muppets present great moments in American history. It works so much better than I ever expected it to.
And in fact, it took off so quickly at the beginning that the rumors started spreading that something similar was going to occur in Hollywood Studios. So they built that new Grand Avenue area, which is essentially the entrance to Star Wars Land now. And the rumor currently still, people are saying that maybe those upper level windows will be used for a Muppet show and they'll reenact scenes from Star Wars.
Oh my goodness.
And like you said, I mean, they could do it.
If that came true, you know what? That'd be smart because there will be huge lines of people lining that street for a long period of time. So that would be like Q entertainment if they did that. I mean, it would be a problem for people who just wanted to see the show, but that would be fantastic.
I mean, 2 years ago, I would have been like, that sounds stupid. But now I've seen great moments and I'm like, put Muppets everywhere.
That's pretty much how I feel. They actually used to have speaking of like seeing the Muppets in person, they did that here at Disneyland. They had this promotion called Give a Day, Get a Disney Day, where they were encouraging people to volunteer. And if you volunteered for a day, they gave you a ticket to the park. And because of that, like the Muppets were kind of the mascots of that whole promotion. And so they had like a pre-parade float with the Muppets on it. And it was the Muppets, and it was kind of cool to see them riding down Main Street USA because as much as a fan I am of the Muppets, and as a kid I loved seeing them do that stage show at Disney MGM Studios, I think it was called Here Come the Muppets, they were like walk-around character Muppets, and I never understood why they did that. I was just like, no, that's not the Muppets.
Right.
So I'm thrilled to see them in their current form at Magic Kingdom, and everybody should go see that and celebrate America along with the Muppets. But there is an attraction that, honest to God, this is usually one of the first things I do at Magic Kingdom, and I know that makes me a loser. But Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress is one of my favorite things to ever come out of Walt Disney Imagineering. Do you feel that way as well? Are we on the same page?
I don't feel that way, but I like it.
Okay.
But I certainly don't do it every trip. Really?
Okay. This is a must every trip for me, and if it's down for maintenance or something, I will throw a tantrum. But once again, this attraction started at the 1964 World's Fair, went to Disneyland, where it is currently the Star Wars, what do they call it, Launch Bay? Am I saying the right thing? Yeah. Star Wars Launch Bay. It was in that space from 1967 to 1973, and then in 75, it moved to the Magic Kingdom. And, do you know why it moved to the Magic Kingdom? I found this interesting.
I don't think I do.
So the sponsor was GE and General Electric, and they felt that their advertising dollars were being wasted with it still being at Disneyland because a lot of Disneyland is repeat guests. So they're like, well, the same people are seeing it over and over. They're not getting, we're not getting our product in front of new eyes. So when they heard that the Magic Kingdom was opening, they're like, we want to get it over there. We'll continue to pay for it if you move it to the Magic Kingdom. And that's why it moved, which I thought was really, really interesting.
Wow. And little did they know that years later, thousands of guests every day would walk by it and have no idea that there's an attraction inside.
Stop. It's not like it's it's not like it's empty. When I go on it, like it's a pretty decently sized filled audience.
It's just bad placement in the park, I think.
Sure, I'll give you that. But they better never take it away. It has been updated several times. It was updated in 1967, 1975, 1981, 1985, and 1993, which means it's as old as Jurassic Park, which is currently in its 25th anniversary. So I do hear, have you heard the rumors that supposedly it's going to be updated for the 50th anniversary?
Well, Tomorrowland as a whole is getting all sorts of updates, so that does not surprise me.
Yeah, I hope it's true just because as much as I love it as it is, and we would lose some really wonderful voices because, I'm blanking on his name. Who's the guy who wrote A Christmas Story? Who is the voice of Father?
I do not know.
Completely blanking. Gene Shepherd, I think. I think that's accurate. In any case, he's the voice of Father, and I would miss that voice for sure. But yeah, you've seen A Christmas Story, yes?
Yeah.
The narrator of that movie is Gene Shepherd. That's the voice of Father in the Carousel of Progress.
That's crazy.
Crazy, right? So next time you watch it, just think of A Christmas Story. Anywho, the reason we mention it today is because Act 2 in this show is very Americana. It takes place on the 4th of July in the 1920s. We see Mother sewing a George Washington costume for Father to wear. We see the son and grandfather listening to the radio, blasting Stars and Stripes. And the daughter is dressed up as the Statue of Liberty. And we have Uncle Orville in the bath with Uncle Sam, with his Uncle Sam costume hanging in the background. And it's just, it kind of goes through many holidays, that attraction. It goes through Valentine's Day and 4th of July, Halloween, and Christmas. And to me, this is just the all-American family in general. So I kind of like the fact that they have a 4th of July scene to make it even more American. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. Who do you know who dresses up for the 4th of July?
Well, I was actually wondering if maybe back in the 20s, that was a thing, because it makes me think of The Music Man. Are you familiar with that movie or musical?
Ish.
Yeah, and they had a giant fair for the 4th of July, and everybody was kind of dressed in patriotic Sunday best kind of stuff. So I don't know historically. This may just be completely fictionalized for the attraction. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was more pride in your country back then, if that was more of a thing.
I could buy it. Yeah, because the mom said something about, we're going as George and Martha Washington.
Yeah.
And then the son is already wearing his colonial uniform.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the sister is the Statue of Liberty.
I totally buy it. I never questioned it. I was just that was the 20s. Yeah, but It could be totally fictionalized. I have no idea. One interesting thing about the Carousel of Progress when it was at Disneyland is up on the second level was actually the full model of Progress City, which you can now see a portion of on the People Mover at the Magic Kingdom. But that's something, unfortunately, that was lost once it moved over because it's only one level at Walt Disney World. So... in any case, I love this attraction. It's always a must-see for me. But if you want to get patriotic, go sit through Act 2 and then leave the theater. No, don't. The theater moves. Do not leave after Act 2.
Oh, man. It's just... I honestly, if we were talking about American-themed things at Walt Disney World, this would not even cross my mind. But it does not surprise me in the least that you wanted to include this.
Of course, it absolutely crossed my mind. I will include Carousel of Progress and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids into almost anything I can. So
and there it is.
There
I was waiting for it.
There we go. Now something truly patriotic that happens every day at the Disney parks.
Yes, every single evening, if you are standing in Town Square, you might be able to witness the flag retreat, which is when a color guard shows up and they lower the flag and they fold it. Of course, the whole ceremony, it in a very nice way, honors former and current military personnel. So any guests who are part of that are sort of invited to stand around the flagpole. Is it called the Disneyland Band?
Yeah.
In Disneyland? Okay. And in Magic Kingdom, it's called the Main Street Philharmonic. They play some medleys of Disney songs. American patriotic songs. The Dapper Dans usually perform God Bless America. It's this whole big ordeal in a good way. Everyone is very respectful of what's happening. And then my favorite part is when, after they folded the flag, they actually present it to a guest who's there that day who has served in the armed forces.
You mean, what do you mean by present it? They don't take it home with them.
No, but, well, as far as I know, they do, but I assume they hand it to him, he holds it, they all walk off, and then he gives it back.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool. But
it's usually one of the Dapper Dans who says, and here with us today we have, George whatever from so-and-so who served blah, 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 and then they hand it to him, and it's neat.
Yeah, it is a very nice moment. I've definitely stopped and watched it before, but it is, it's interesting because, as you say, people are respectful of it. in that immediate circle of the flagpole. But there's so much busyness going on around it that it's just so interesting because there are people exiting and entering the park. And obviously, you know, Disney expects that. I don't think anybody's really offended by that. But it is interesting because it's such like a special ceremony happening right in the middle of the park. But this is one of those moments especially where I think to myself, my goodness, what are the foreign tourists thinking right now? They must think this is the weirdest thing. And yeah, I find that very, very interesting.
I mean, think of an international guest who arrives at like sundown. They walk in, the flag retreat's happening. Then they go to the first attraction they see, which is Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln on their right.
Right.
And they're like, all right, we're in America now. This is what's happening.
Now, so obviously the tradition in America is that you lower the flag each day so that it's not left in darkness. And of course, they do this with that flag at the flagpole. But do you know the story about all of the other flags on Main Street, USA?
I do. I actually recently found this out.
Go ahead and tell it.
Oh, okay. So basically, American government law, whatever, says that a flag has to be lowered or at least illuminated at night. And the ones along Main Street are not illuminated. So what they've done to sort of cheat the system is remove one of the stars on the flag. So it's not technically a traditional American flag and they don't have to take them down every night.
Yeah, I believe they might be missing a stripe as well. And from what I understand, they're hung on lightning rods. So that's another reason why they don't want to put like real American flags on there because they basically don't want to zap and catch one on fire. But I hear, maybe not all of them, but I hear some of them are on lightning rods, missing a star and or missing a stripe. So I think that's really interesting and obviously respectful. And it always amazes me the thought that goes into some of the things that Disney does, especially when sometimes there's things that are so obvious that I'm like, how did you not think of this? And I'm like, but you did think of that. So bravo for that. I do have a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, maybe I'm just realizing this. Maybe I think it feels respectful because do they turn off the Main Street background music while this happens?
Yes. Yeah. At least, I don't know about Main Street, but at least the town square.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because in that sense, it does feel like I should be quiet.
Yes.
You know, you get that mindset.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying there. Now, I have a question for you, and I couldn't find a definitive answer for this when doing research, but have you heard the story that Main Street USA on a normal day at the park is supposed to be perpetually the 4th of July? Have you heard that?
I have heard that.
Okay. Have you ever heard that for fact or heard like a Disney tour tell that story or anything?
I have heard that many times from my co-host Jeremy, and I think that's it.
Okay. So, I mean, can we really trust him?
That's a great question.
But I think it's a great sentiment, and I do get, even if that's not an official thing, I get why somebody would start that story because they've got the bunting all along Main Street USA. And of course, if it's Halloween, the bunting turns to orange and Christmas becomes garland and such. But most of the year, it does feel like 4th of July on Main Street USA. So I think that that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I buy it.
But yeah, that happens every day at the Disney parks as well, at Disneyland Park and at the Magic Kingdom. And something ridiculous, but I had to throw it in here because it is certainly Americana, is the heroic encounter with Captain America over at Disney California Adventure in Hollywoodland. And I love the description that the Disneyland website has for this. It says, "All hail the Sentinel of Liberty. Head to Hollywoodland for a very special meeting with the most red, white, and true blue hero of them all, Captain America. Catch Cap as he arrives via the Avengers vehicle, then gather around his iconic vibranium shield to share a star-spangled salute, pose for patriotic pics, and hear the all-American superhero's latest tales. Let freedom ring."
Who's telling latest tales? That is not a thing.
I'm going to go to it says you'll tell me a tale. Tell me one. Get out of here.
Enchanted Tales with Captain America.
Yeah, right. I just loved this description. And listen, it's certainly Americana that you can do every day at a Disney park, at least at Disney California Adventure. So I thought I'd mention it. And those are all of the attractions currently running in the Disney parks that you can do every single day to celebrate America, especially on this 4th of July day. But there is one attraction that's been retired that I did want to mention briefly just because it's a pretty major America attraction. So why don't you take that one, Debbie?
Yeah, this is one that I did not have the pleasure of experiencing
Me either.
while it was around.
Yeah, me either.
Okay. In fact, when I've always heard of the name America Sings, which is the name of this attraction, I always assumed it was in Walt Disney World. Like I didn't realize till recently that it was a Disneyland attraction. But basically this, I'm sad to say, is what replaced the beloved Carousel of Progress when it moved to Walt Disney World in Florida.
Are you saying that facetiously?
No, okay. I mean, for your sake, I'm sorry that you don't have it anymore in your park.
Can you imagine if I did have the Carousel of Progress? I could probably recite the show at this point if we had it in our park here.
We didn't have laser discs and high definition whatever he says, which is fun.
Exactly.
So this show, America Sings, used the same theater. It used a similar concept where there were 6 identical theaters, each having a different scene that you rotated to be able to see. But what was different is that all the audio animatronics were animals, and they presented American songs.
Yeah.
And what's funny to me and to anyone who's seen pictures of this, if when you see the animals, like Sam the Eagle is your host along with Ollie the Owl.
Not the Muppets, Sam the Eagle.
No. Different Sam the Eagle. His name is Sam. He's an eagle. That's it. That's where it stops. He's not blue. The first scene is set in a swamp in the deep south. So there's 3 alligators called the Swamp Boys playing instruments. All of these audio animatronics probably sound familiar, and they definitely look familiar, and that's because when this attraction did close after like 12 years, all of these audio animatronics were reused for Splash Mountain. So that was the first thought I had as I was looking at all these pictures. I'm like, oh, that's in Splash Mountain. Oh, he's in Splash Mountain.
Yeah, a great majority of them are. I think only like Sam the Eagle and maybe one other character is not. They reused everything, and some of them, as the story goes, were deskinned. Some of the geese were deskinned and put in the Star Tours queue because they ran out of money building Star Tours, and like, we need to fill this queue with something. And even to this day, if you look at those audio animatronic figures, they have webbed feet as you're in the queue for Star Tours. So,
oh, interesting. Yeah. So my first thought when I was looking at this, okay, so this is a show where each scene has a different era or maybe a different setting, but all heavily American themed. So like the Deep South was the first scene, and then the second scene is the Old West. It's like a plane on the Old West, and it's all American. But my first thought was, what does this have to do with Tomorrowland?
Yes, absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
It was really poorly placed. It was, it was put there to celebrate America's bicentennial. So it opened in 1974. So in 2 years, it would be 1976, 200 years after 1776, and it was a huge celebration in the country. And I was actually talking to an older friend of mine recently about this, and he was like, hey, do you remember what was going on in 1976? I was like, no, I wasn't alive. And he was like, bicentennial, it was like a big deal, man. And I was like, oh, I guess it would be, right? Like that totally makes sense. That is a pretty big deal. And so Disney wanted to do something with it, but yes, the placement of it makes 0 sense.
Well, because like you said, bicentennial was such a big deal. Like, I feel like people accepted it. I mean, like, oh wow, they're celebrating the bicentennial with this attraction. So I actually can excuse that. Mm-hmm. But then you get into 1977, 1978. Eventually, it's 1987, and the attraction's still there. Part of me would be like, okay, hold on.
Time to go.
Why is this in Tomorrowland?
Yeah, so. But it is pretty, if you've never seen it, and most people probably haven't, there are full videos of it on YouTube. Worth checking out at least once, just to see your favorite Splash Mountain figures singing and dancing through the bayou and such. It's fun. But before we move on to some trivia, I just want to take a moment to talk about a little sentence in Walt Disney's opening day speech that is very patriotic, and that is simply, Disneyland is dedicated to the ideals, the dreams, and the hard facts that have created America. I think that kind of like sums it up as to why people really have such like an American nostalgia feel toward the park. It's been there since day one. It's been there since Walt's opening speech. And I just think it's a lovely sentiment. It's a great place to spend the 4th of July if you ever have the opportunity. Yeah, it's crowded, but it's a cool experience, and I think it puts you in the right mood. Have you ever done 4th of July at the Magic Kingdom?
I haven't, just because I've heard nightmare stories about it, just crowd-wise, but I can't. I mean, it's got to be awesome.
Yeah. It's very cool. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the patriotism in the Disney park. So I think that means it's trivia time. Okay, Derek, do you want to hit me with a trivia question first, or shall I hit you?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So you might, well, you don't remember, but you might remember hearing about America on Parade.
Yes. Oh, goodness.
Yes.
We did a whole episode about America on Parade, like, I think back in season 1. That is a weird parade.
It's so bizarre. You better know this if you did a whole episode. So basically, for those who don't know, this parade replaced Main Street Electrical Parade for an entire year to celebrate what we've been talking about, the bicentennial. So Don Dorsey was a guy who used synthesizers. He used Carousel organs to create the soundtrack. Do you know who was asked to write a specialty song for this parade?
Was it the Sherman Brothers?
It was the Sherman Brothers.
Yes, I remember that. I don't remember the song. And if I'm remembering correctly, as I was doing research for that episode, I was trying to find the song to listen to, and I couldn't find it. But yeah.
Yes. The song was called The Glorious Fourth.
Okay.
And maybe 3 or 4 months ago, we did a show. Aaron Walsh joined us, and we talked about all of the parades in Magic Kingdom's history. And when I got to this one, I, too, looked everywhere for this song, and it is nowhere to be found.
Did it play the Magic Kingdom as well? Or was it just Disneyland?
America on Parade? Yeah, it was on both coasts.
Okay. Yeah, it was I mean, literally floats were giant sandwiches, and there was a giant Betsy Ross rocker. And it was bizarre. Google image America on Parade Disneyland, and you are in for some good laughs, is what I'll have to say about that.
I love it.
Excellent. Good question. My question for you has to do with the Voices of Liberty. And now this is not a group that Disney created. This is like an outside organization that's brought in and primarily sings at Epcot. But when performing outside of Disney, they go by a different name. Do you know the name that they go by? They don't go by Voices of Liberty.
Is it the Liberty Voices?
Whoa, very good, sir.
Okay, I thought that was right. And also, like, a segment of that group have gone off and started their own group called Voctive.
Yes, which
it's basically the same.
On your show from that group, right?
Yeah, so probably 2 years ago, we had Jamie Ray, who sings for Voices of Liberty, but he actually arranges their songs now. Like, Of course, they have a huge collection of songs built up, but any new songs they do, he arranges them. Did you hear when they did the Epcot's 35th celebration, Voices of Liberty got to take the stage during the ceremony, and they just sang a medley of old Epcot songs?
I feel like I did. I'm not having great memory of it at the moment, but I do remember hearing something about that. And yeah, the Voices of Liberty are awesome. That's all it comes down to.
Oh, yeah.
They're fantastic.
It was fantastic, and people were raved about it all day. And Jamie happened to be singing with the Voices of Liberty when we saw them that afternoon. And so I just stopped him and said how good they sounded earlier, and he told me that he arranged that medley. So,
do they sell an album in the park?
They used to. I don't know if you can still get it.
Oh, eBay. Okay, so they used to sell one, at least. That's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, Derek, thanks so much for coming on the show to talk about the patriotism in the Disney parks this 4th of July. Before we get going, go ahead and plug your show, The Mad Chatters, a show that I enjoy every Wednesday.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. You actually were on our most recent episode.
That's true.
Or one of our most recent episodes to play some games with us. We had a wonderful time, so thank you for joining us for that. But yeah, you can find us on iTunes. You can find us at madchatters.net. We are a weekly podcast. We like to play games and have fun and do wacky segments, but we also dive into Disney history and all sorts of Disney things. And we're also on Twitter and Facebook, so come say hey.
Thank you so much, Derek. Till next time, have a happy 4th of July.
You as well.
And before we get going, I do want to remind all of you that it is a new month, which means there is a new Disney music playlist out there that I have created for you. In order to get that, just go to DisneyCoastToCoast.com, click on the playlist tab there, and sign up for that. Also, I want to remind you that every single day on Instagram, we play the Daily Disney Decision, where I hop on Instagram Live and present you with a decision related to Disney, where you get to vote and play the game. We do that every day, so make sure you're following DIZNEYCTC over on Instagram for that. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for watching Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePaoli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.